The American dream has been fueled by a steady supply of cheap and easily accessible conventional oil. It is an energy-intensive process that until recently cost too much to be profitable. Higher oil prices now offset the cost, and the oil sand industry is booming. With global energy demands rapidly increasing, international markets have their eyes set on Alberta's black gold. Canada has enough oil in reserve to feed the country for the next 400 years, but at what cost to the environment? Alberta's oil sands are one of the largest proven bitumen reserves in the world, covering an area of about the size of New Brunswick. Modern-day technologies in North America now rely on a dirtier substance called bitumen. Bitumen is a type of heavy oil with a thick consistency of molasses that is found mixed with sand, gravel, water, clay, and other minerals. The Alberta oil reserves are buried underneath the Canadian boreal forest. Two methods are used for extracting oil sands from below the ground: surface mining and in situ technology. Surface mining can be used up to a depth of 75 meters. To reach the oil sand layer, the overlaying boreal forest must first be clear-cut. Topsoil is then removed to finally expose the bitumen reserves. Currently, 60% of extraction in Alberta is through surface mining, but this only represents 20% of what can potentially be developed. For reserves deeper than 75 meters, in situ technology is used. It is called in situ because extraction occurs in place through pipes that are injected deep underground, usually at depths at between 350 to 600 meters. Two pipes are drilled parallel to each other. Through the first, high-pressure steam is injected downwards into the reserve, which heats the bitumen and causes it to separate from the sand and other material. The bitumen then seeps into a lower well and is pumped up to the surface through the second pipe. Bitumen extracted through both processes needs to be further upgraded into synthetic oil and other marketable products before being sold on the market.
But as far as the the energy intensity, it used to require 100 times. Like, you used to be able to get 100 times energy return on every unit of energy used to exploit oil. So, right? So you get 100 times back. With the tar sands, it's about 4 to 1. Means you get 4 energy units return for the amount of energy used. So as soon as that drops down to 1 to 1, then it becomes, what's the point, right? Why is it taking us 1 unit of energy to get 1 unit of energy back? That's an exercise in futility.
Surface mining destroys vast areas of Canada's boreal forest. Often referred to as the lungs of Canada, the boreal forest provides valuable ecosystem services to the environment, all of which are being lost through its destruction. It filters water, sequesters carbon, prevents flooding, protects against erosion, and provides habitat to many species. Although less forested areas removed through in situ mining, the impacts of fragmentation are considered just as bad or even worse.
And so, of course, all of this landscape is devoid of trees, so it has impacts. But that's not the only impact. The stuff we see in the videos is just, the open pit mine, but the impact is far beyond because of the infrastructure required for those trucks to get in there. So the new roads, the electrical lines, the pipelines, the loading bays, all those things, they all impact the forest. And of course, the forest itself, outside those scraped off areas, is fragmented because of all these lines cutting through, and that will affect the wildlife.
Oil sand exploitation also significantly impacts water resources. Huge quantities of water are used to both extract and process the bitumen from the sands. The oil sands use up to 4 barrels of water to produce only 1 barrel of oil. Water for Alberta's oil sands comes from the Athabasca Peace River Delta, the third largest watershed in the world. It is a recognized UNESCO World Heritage Site because of its importance to fish, migratory birds, and other species. It flows northeast through Alberta for over 1,300 kilometers before reaching the Athabasca Lake, which feeds into the Mackenzie River and eventually drains into the Arctic Ocean. Companies are allowed to remove more than 650 million cubic meters from the Athabasca River each year, but not that much is actually extracted. In 2011, 170 million cubic meters were taken from the Athabascan River, the equivalent of 68,000 Olympic swimming pools. Despite them not extracting as much as they could have, river flow in the lower Athabascan River has decreased by 30% over the past 40 years. Polluting this water could have much farther-reaching implications than what we were able to see or predict. In 2008, a study was conducted based on 30 samples taken from up and downstream sites of the Athabasca Delta that found concentrations of elements at high enough levels to poison people and animals. These included arsenic, mercury, copper, zinc, and others, all of which are listed as primary pollutants under the U.S. Environmental Agency Clean Water Act. In some areas, the mercury levels were high enough to trigger fish consumption advisories. These toxins during certain periods are high enough to kill minnow embryos, threaten fish species, and limit food sources for predators. This compromises the natural food web of the ecosystem. Another concern is the heavy metal accumulation during the winter months, all of which is released during the spring melt in coordination with fish spawning. Several fish have been reported ashore with physical mutations which could be related to contamination. The oil sands also produce large amounts of toxic pools of waste called tailings. Tailings are the biggest environmental concern out of all the impacts related to the oil sands. They are a mixture of water, sand, clay, small bitumen particulates, heavy elements, and production-induced chemicals. Impacts on water are felt much more locally, but impacts on air are global in scope. Air pollutants from the oil sands come from smokestacks, the tailing ponds, transportation of bitumen and refined oil, and dust from mining operations. As development progresses, emissions are also projected to increase, but it is difficult to monitor the overall effects of these pollutants because of chemical transformations and long-range transmission. Some effects are more visible, however. For example, acid rain, which is caused from the release of nitrous oxide and sulfur dioxide. Acid rain can destroy natural vegetation, decrease soil productivity, and contaminate lakes. there are other emissions released in significant amounts that contribute to global warming. In 2009, oil sand plants and upgrading facilities alone produced 45 million tons of greenhouse gases, which increased by 22 million tons from levels in 2000. This is also projected to double by 2020. The Alberta oil sands account for 7% of Canada's total emissions. Producing 1 barrel of synthetic oil releases 111 kilograms of carbon dioxide emissions. Conventional oil, on the other hand, only produces 35.2. This is almost 4 times as much. If Alberta were a country, its per capita greenhouse gas emissions would be higher than any other country in the world. These numbers wouldn't be so daunting if the Earth's ability to sink carbon wasn't being destroyed simultaneously through oil sand development. With clear-cutting of forests and removal of peatlands on the rise, the carbon stored within these environmental agents is released, which amplifies the greenhouse effect.